Did you know that carrying a firearm is really only a need that poor people have? If you have any kind of money whatsoever, that lessens your need for a firearm. I know what you're thinking, that sounds pretty ridiculous. Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about as I respond to a video from David Pakman. Now, his whole video basically is about Maria Bartiromo, the Fox News host, that says she now is training with a firearm. And he's basically saying that you don't need a firearm. You have so much money, you can buy your own protection. Well, is there any truth to that? I'm going to give you my opinion, and of course, I want to hear yours after the video as well. Whether you agree or disagree with me, that's totally fine. The other part of this that I want to touch on, though, is that he said his liberal friends are now buying more guns to keep up, basically, or protect themselves against the whack jobs. Now, I might be included as one of the whack jobs. I have no idea, but I want to talk about that here as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
This is so pathetic. A Fox News host, Maria Bartiromo, is pretending that she's so worried about what's going to happen because of angry anti-Trump people once Trump is president, that she's learning how to handle a gun.
So his whole point of the video is Maria Bartiromo and her need for a firearm. I mean, she makes a lot of money. She's worth a lot of money. Her and her husband bought this multi-million-dollar townhome, according to reports, I guess, back in 2007, right? And there was one video I watched where they said she not only has one, but two cameras, right? And that high level of security is pretty incredible because she's a high-profile figure. I don't know if you know this, but having just two cameras around your home actually is not that high profile anymore. Maybe it was back in the day, but it no longer is the case. Hell, I have four around my home. Now, they're not necessarily paid off. I do those in installments, through my security company. That's besides the point. A lot of us have cameras on our homes. I mean, Jesus, we all have at least a doorbell camera, so that's not really like a high level of protection. The other thing about her home is it's like 11 minutes from where the United CEO was actually just taken out. Well, that seems kind of interesting, right? High profile guy, another rich guy that was taken out just 11 minutes from where Maria lives. Now, isn't it true that Maria should just buy her own protection? I mean, she's a high profile person, and let's just be honest, she could probably afford some protection. That might be the best way for her to go. Well, I don't know if you remember this, David, but back in July of last year, our 45th president, and now our 47th, was actually almost taken out himself, and he has Secret Service at his disposal. We found some holes in that service, by the way, but at the end of the day, he still has way more protection than anything Maria Bartiromo would ever get. Other rich people who've had their lives taken, John Lennon, Versace. Versace, I think, was like worth 800 million, maybe $1 billion at the time of his passing. John Lennon, 200 million, that was back then. Selena, that's another high profile one. She was worth a lot of money, of course. Somebody very close to her ended up taking her life. There was a billionaire couple up in Toronto. Their bodies, unfortunately, were found inside of their home. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was taken out, him and his wife, and that literally started World War I. These are very high profile people, and these are like the highest profile people. That's not even counting some of just the multi-millionaires out there that nobody really knows the name of, just like the United Health CEO, right? Not many people really knew his name, and now everybody does, right? But before that, nobody knew his name, but the guy's a multimillionaire just walking around New York. The point is, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. Sometimes the more money you have in the bank, the more of a target you become. And what's the cutoff, by the way? I'd like to know this. 1 million, 5, 10, 20, 100 million? What's the cutoff at which we could say, okay, now it's time to get rid of the guns because we have so much money, we can just pay for our own personal protection. You no longer need a firearm. Most of us are not those people with that much money, and so most of us are our own protectors, and you have to rely on yourself for that protection, including Fox News hosts and other people that have a lot of money, because again, sometimes they're some of the most targeted people out there, regardless if they have any kind of security or not. People can get right through that. We've already seen it. Now, he also uses this example in the middle of the video, like, hey, the gun lobby will actually say if crime rates are up, you need a gun to protect yourself. But if crime rates are low, that's because more people actually are carrying guns, so people are less inclined to actually commit crimes because they know there's other people with guns around. Well, yeah, criminals typically will go for people they know are going to give them less resistance, right? You hardly ever see anybody going in trying to rob a big gun store when it's open anyways. Typically, they're going to go for either that said store when it's closed, or they're going to go somewhere where people don't typically have firearms. They have very little resistance, and when the resistance comes, then they, a lot of the times, will end up taking themselves out. It's a very cowardly approach, but that is what a lot of people will do when they're targeting somewhere. So yes, if you have, let's just say, for instance, teachers, right? And schools start implementing this practice like, hey, you go through X amount of training, whatever that may be, you have your permit, blah, blah, blah. You can carry on your person to protect your kids. If we took extra measures to protect those schools, you would find less guns making their ways inside the schools. Now, that doesn't mean that kids won't bring them, right? Just like at TSA checkpoints, right? You see thousands of guns every single year. You know that bag's going to be checked, and you know there's like a 99.9% probability that you will never get it through TSA. People still bring them, whether it's on accident or for nefarious purposes. But there are ways to stop them, and yeah, people with guns, as cliche as it may sound, good people with guns can absolutely stop bad ones. Or in a lot of cases, they might not necessarily even stop the crime before it happens, but when it happens, somebody there, wherever that may be, with a firearm can stop more people from losing their lives. 100%. Now, we could always cherry pick, hey, this example, this person had a gun, but they actually ran away, or this person, they had a gun and they still got robbed. Yeah, there's going to be incidences like that. That's going to happen. But generally speaking, when you're armed and somebody knows you're armed, they might be less likely at actually choosing you and might choose somebody else that is unarmed. The whole theory, if you have a security system sign out in your front yard, you may not even have a security system. But just the fact you have a sign might make a criminal think twice before hitting your home when your neighbor has no sign. They see least path of resistance, and typically, they're going to go that route. The last part of this that he talks about is the fact that his liberal friends are now buying more guns, right? And he essentially says that almost all of them come up to him and say, hey, David, I have to buy a gun. I don't really like having a gun, but, it's the fact that, these people have 400 million guns, these whack jobs, right? And I don't want them to just have guns. I need a gun too. Now, I don't take offense to the word whack job, because at the end of the day, I see a lot of people on that side of the aisle as serious whack jobs, right? We may see that term in a little bit different light, but I promise you, the feeling is very mutual. But if that's what it takes for his liberal friends to finally buy a firearm and finally come to the realization that they are their own protector, that's fantastic. They use me as an example, or you as an example, to say, I don't want those people as to be the only ones that are armed. I got to be armed myself. Great. We just made one new gun owner and we didn't even really have to try. You should be armed. It doesn't matter where you fall politically. I've said that since the beginning of this channel. Even though I've kept politics off of it for most of the life of the channel, I still have always said it does not matter race, political leanings, whatever. You should absolutely own a firearm to protect yourself. And look, I just made a video just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now at this point, where there are liberal groups, right, or LGBTQ plus groups that are buying more guns now because they're afraid of what Trump is actually going to do to them when he's in office. So using Maria as an example, like, oh, maybe she's scared. She didn't actually say this, by the way, but maybe she's more frightened because of what anti-MAGA people will do to her. And then you have groups of people that are against Trump that are afraid of what he's going to do to them. Now you have a whole bunch of people that are kind of afraid of what's going to happen to them. At the end of the day, if they all end up buying firearms for self-protection, and hopefully, maybe, even some of them will recognize what the Second Amendment is actually about, we've won. That's fantastic news for everybody. That's my opinion. But of course, I want to hear yours, no matter what it is. Leave that down below. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.